A spiritual awakening, a near-death experience containing telepathic communication and more we have in store for you today. Hi, I'm Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And I'd like to personally welcome you to another episode of We Don't Die. Just a reminder, my home base is wedon'tdie.com, where you can always find great things like our medium classes. Every Sunday, we have an inspirational service online called our Sunday Gathering. It is free, and there's a medium demonstration included that's held on Zoom. Also, if you're a super fan of investigating the afterlife, between this show I have and also my Shades of the Afterlife on iHeartRadio, I have well over 700 hours of episodes. And if you're interested, you can join my Patreon community. For any donation, we'll get you in there, but you'll receive all future episodes of We Don't Die before the general public, all commercial free. Plus, you'll get a clickable list of all 700 plus of those episodes. Again, you can find all that at wedon'tdie.com. Well, our wonderful guest today is Steven LaRussa, a certified master spiritual coach who is passionate about helping each of us find our path and our purpose, also helping us connect with our higher selves, the spirit world, and our spirit team. You can find out more about him at his website, spiritualalignmentsl.com. Let's meet him. Steven, welcome to We Don't Die.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm super excited to talk to you today. I know your journey, as all of our spiritual journeys, they aren't easy, but people are always very interested to hear about our transformation. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background before you move into our, your spiritual awakenings, etc.
Okay. Well, yeah, I have basically the typical, I say, Christian background as far as spiritual or religious beliefs. Growing up in a Christian home, going to church and whatnot, studying the Bible and everything. Grew up in Northern California. Have a wife. We've been married 25 years. My son, who's 21, and spent most of my life at 9 to 5 working manufacturing jobs. I worked for GM and Toyota, amongst various other manufacturing jobs and positions. I was a QC supervisor, a lead, so that type of thing. So I spent a lot of my life in the 9 to 5, wife, son, pretty typical life and whatnot. Well, that's pretty typical up till a couple of years ago, that is. So then everything changed. So basically that is what I've done, what I've did, and that's kind of my story. Like I said, moved around, bought some homes, invested in some properties, that sort of thing and whatnot. But other than that, pretty typical, like I said, until everything got turned upside down.
Well, let's hear about that. Sounds like you're living just a good life, working hard, doing your best.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Well, basically for me, and I think for a lot of people with a spiritual awakening, is usually, not all the time, but usually brought on by crisis. Severe circumstances that really alter our thinking and we can get us thinking about what it's all about. So for me, I went through a stage where I was working at First American Title. I had lost my job due to downsizing. My wife and I were not getting along, fighting. We were literally on the verge of a divorce. We were going through our problems. My son was going, through his problems, his growing pains and whatnot. I had invested in some commercial property, actually in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and actually moved out there for a while when I was separated from my wife. That was spiraling out of control. The cost, trying to find a honest contractor, trying to find an honest property management, a lot of things going on with that, losing a lot of money, basically losing my life savings in that investment. So all of those things contributed and began my spiritual awakening. It's like everything broke down. And that's how it usually happens. It's a breakdown of everything that you're doing to rebuild you back up. So at the time, obviously, I didn't know what was going on. I started to get depressed, sad, and it always usually begins with the questions. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I killing myself trying to constantly obtain more and more and more to fulfill this void of happiness? And it's never enough because we get caught in this circle of wanting, getting, and then wanting again. You want something, a house, a job, a person, a car, whatever it may be. You get it, and then that thrill, just like a drug, wears off, and you're looking for something else to fill the void of happiness. And I felt myself doing that. I was like, God, there's got to be more to this. It's got to be more to living 70, 80, 90 years and chasing the world's ideal of success and killing myself to obtain this ideal of what success is through society's eyes. And it just created a whole breakdown. And that's what sparked my spiritual awakening, basically.
Where does it go from there? Because I know for myself, sometimes you got to hit rock bottom before you
Yeah.
get that foundation to pick yourself back up. What did your spiritual awakening look like to you?
My spiritual awakening to me was very rough. I went through the period of what we call the dark night of the soul in the spiritual awakening, which is the extreme struggle between the ego self and your higher self for control. And we a lot of times make that worse because we don't want to let go of the ego and of our life when the universe, when God is trying to pull you away from that and pull you out of that. So we create a lot more of our suffering by trying to hold on. That's what I did. I tried to ignore it. I tried to do the same jobs. I tried to hang around the same people, and whatnot, but it didn't resonate with me. And the funny thing about it is a lot of us know when it doesn't resonate, but we're so comfortable with it, we would rather keep doing something that doesn't resonate and doesn't work because of fear of stepping away from that. Because it's like, okay, where do I go? What do I do if this is all I know? And that keeps us trapped in that, and we stay suffering. And it's amazing how people would rather suffer in something they're comfortable with than step out and trust God in the universe to open up doors for them. When God, the universe, is trying to close doors, that's what it is, and we resist it. I attribute it to when somebody's closed the door and they stick their foot in the door, they won't let it close. That's what we do a lot of times. So for me, it was going through a severe depression, a severe questioning, a severe, I went through every emotion: anger, sadness, confusion, because I had no idea what was going on. But like a lot of people, if this is not something you're aware of beforehand or have studied or looked into, you may think you're going crazy. You may think you're having a mental breakdown. I thought I was having a midlife crisis. I had no idea what it was. So for me, I didn't know, as I know now, to let go and give in to the universe and trust the universe. I fought it. So I tried to hang on to those things. And by doing that, I prolonged it and I made it worse.
I can totally get it. And I was just talking about that yesterday about how we try to hang on to things, even if they're not in our best interest. We're afraid of the unknown. So at some point, you got some droplets of wisdom and it changed. I know that
Yes.
you've experienced a near-death experience. I don't know if that's
Mhm.
part of it or after, but what started presenting itself that you started letting that ego self quiet down and being open to something bigger?
Well, for me, for me, it was just through personal research. It was, it was instilled in me when I was going through this that I started to have, and which happens during a spiritual awakening, a search for knowledge, a search for truth, where you will start, what you've been doing, what you've been told, the programming, the mental, social constructs, religious dogma, a lot of that is not the truth. You know what I mean? So you start realizing, okay, there's something more to this. There's an inkling in me that there's something that I need to learn, that I need to find. And it's basically just, for me, it was just a search for the truth, for the meaning of it all. So for me, through research, through stumbling upon videos, articles, which translated into me buying books, which translated into me taking classes to get certified in a lot of different spiritual topics and whatnot. So it kind of starts with that questioning and then that little research that opens the door. And then I realize, okay, wait a minute. Here's what I'm going through. Oh, I do feel this. I do feel this. This is called a spiritual awakening. And everything just caught, the universe put everything out there for me to be able to see it. That's what the universe will do in synchronicities: guide you to the correct videos, the correct books, the correct people to answer your questions. So that's what happened with me. And once I went through that, everything changed. You can't hang out with certain relationships are going to fall off. Certain things you used to do, music you used to listen to, everything will change. And a lot of people ask me, how do I know if I'm going through a spiritual awakening? The main thing that happens during spiritual awakening to show you that you're going through is a change of yourself. You're breaking out of that ego self that was never really you, that worldly self with all those ideals and that logic that was programmed into your higher self. And you're not going to be able to do those same things, hang with those same people. Those experiences aren't going to resonate with you anymore. And there's going to be a shift. So for me, it was, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody to tell me like most people don't. So for me, it was just investigation. And that just snowballed into where I am today.
That's good news that we can
Yes.
have all the tools within us to explore. And thank goodness for YouTube and books and
Yes.
Amazon and all that.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Did you continue your career as you had it, or did you start? I know you're a coach these days,
Yes.
and you really empower people. Did that
Yes.
come out of this right away?
Well, it's funny because it didn't, and my story is like a lot of others. After I went through the spiritual awakening, the dark night of the soul, I came out of it. So I started studying quantum physics, reading books, Dolores Cannon, Brian Weiss, Michael Newton, first reading all these books and obtaining all this information. Then I wanted to take it to the next level. So I began taking classes and getting certified and getting more and more information. So now there was a point where it's like, okay, I was comfortable doing that. And I was fine. I was on a roll. But there was a point where God told me, okay, all right, Steve, you're reading. That's great. Now it's time for you to step out there. Now it's time for you to put yourself out there. Time for you to get your website. It's time for you to market yourself. It's time for you to put yourself out there to not so you can find them, but so the people that need you can find you. And I said, I was thinking to myself, okay, now that's when I stopped. That's when I started stalling and starting reverting back to my old self out of fear. Am I good enough? Will I be judged? What are people going to think? Do I know enough? Who am I to do this? It's going to be too much work. All those that ego started to creep back in an effort to stop the calling, because that's what the darkness does. So now I stalled. So I started kind of reverting back into some old ways, old things I used to do. Not a lot, but started taking backtracking because I was scared to step into that. So I stalled for a while and ran from the calling. Now the interesting point is that's what led to and brought on the NDE was my stalling and reverting from my calling and running from it.
Tell us about that. This is so resonating with me because I'm going back. I had the best afterlife information in the world.
Yes.
And it took 10 years before I verbalized it to the public. I'm not good enough. Who's going to listen to
Yep.
me? I'm not
Right.
smart enough to write a book. It was all there. And it
Yep.
wasn't until the death of my dad and discovering grief that brought me to my deepest, darkest depths. And then it
Yes.
was finding really good things about grief and moving through that opened me up to where I
Yes.
am today. But I completely get that ego voice that
Yeah.
just shuts us down. Oh my gosh. So
It's-
you're listening to a lot of people that can relate, or there's a lot of people listening to you that can
That's
relate
good.
to your story right now.
Yeah.
So tell us about what happened physically that brought on the near-death experience, and if you could share that experience with us.
Yes, and my near-death experience, from what I understand, is kind of rare because with most NDEs spark a spiritual awakening, right? Most of the time. Mine, I had my spiritual awakening and dark night of the soul before the NDE. So basically, I started running from the calling. Okay, so this happened October 9th of 2024. So what, not even 6 months ago, 7 months ago. And it's funny, people ask me, how can you talk about it so soon? Most people hold on to their NDEs and these experiences for years, trying to grapple with them and deal with them and understand them and whatnot. And wondered about people thinking they're crazy and they don't want to come out with it. Well, for me, it was different because you got to understand, I had went through a spiritual awakening, a dark night of the soul. So I had kind of been prepped. I wasn't just, you know what I mean? I went through that experience first. So I knew when I went through my NDE, it was a lot easier for me to deal with because I wasn't just fresh off the boat. You know what I mean? I had experienced that. So anyway, started reverting. So my wife was in the Sacramento, California area visiting some friends. She was coming back to Carson City, Nevada, which is where we reside. So I said, you know what? and it's funny. This is how the universe works. Spur of the moment, wasn't planning, wasn't thinking. It just popped in my head. Let's go to Lake Tahoe. Let's go sit by the lake. Let's meditate. Let's kind of rejuvenate spiritually, and let's kind of recharge. So, okay, we go up to the lake. We're driving up. She comes back. We hop in the car together, go up there. There was a strange feeling in the air. There was something weird going on. And I can't put my finger on it, but I was like, there's something weird going on. Not good. I wouldn't classify as a good or bad, just strange. So for the sake of time, I'm going to skip some details and get into the meat and potatoes of it. So we were laying there. I was laying on the bed. Now, I want to make this clear. I was totally awake. I didn't wake up from a sleep. It wasn't lucid dreaming. The TV was on. We were having a conversation. My wife was standing by the bed. We were talking. I was laying on my back. All of a sudden, these pains start on my left side. Sharp shooting pain down my neck, going into my chest, going down my left arm, tingling, sharp shooting pain, and throbbing all at the same time. Now, I've never had a heart attack before, but I've read about the symptoms. You kind of know left side, the pain, blah. So it sounded like everything I had known of. So I didn't want to say anything at first because I didn't want to alarm my wife. And when it started getting worse, I said, okay, this is serious. And it started getting worse. It started to get severe. And my arms started kind of trembling, shaking. So I look over at my wife and I say, Wanda, I think I'm dying. I'm having a heart attack. Now, at this time, what do you expect your spouse or anybody to do? Grab the phone, call 911, right? Here's the interesting part. She didn't do that. She later, after we talked about the experience and whatnot, she later told me that when I said that to her, she heard a voice to tell her to lay down next to me and get in position. And there was a calm that came over. She couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. I was like, my thoughts, why aren't you calling 911? What are you doing? So she lays down next to me. Our arms are bent at the elbow and our arms are up, forearms are up like this. We're holding each other's hand and we're just laying on our back. So now at this point, I feel my soul leave my body. I feel it gradually start to leave. I'm in darkness. That transitions into space out amongst the stars. And I'm slowly traveling through darkness now into space. And in the distance, far distance, I'm seeing a white light in the far distance, which I'm drawn to. So now at this point, because of everything I've gone through with my spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul, all the research I've done, I wasn't surprised by any of this because I, a lot of people are like, oh my God, what's going on? Because they don't, I already knew about this. So I'm like, oh man, oh my gosh. But it's still a shock. I don't care how much you know. When you go through it, I don't care what you've read, going through it. I said, oh my God, I'm dying. I could feel my soul leaving. So at this point, I start praying to God. God, please give me another chance. Blah blah blah. This that. Now I heard God's voice 3 times audibly in my mind during this. So the first time, He said to me, and I heard, "You've wasted enough time." Now, that really shook me, and talk about feeling bad because I knew exactly what He was talking about. As I said, I had all these spiritual experiences, not to mention the dark night of the soul and spiritual awakening, but also a lot of synchronicities happened that showed me I was going in the right direction. And I started to stall, and I knew what He meant. So I started praying. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I know my calling. Of course, when this is going on, you have no concept of time. I have no idea how long this went on. So now the interesting part is, my wife said she started actually feeling my pain. She could feel it on her left side. She said, I doubt it was severe as yours was, but I could feel your pain. So at this point, we start communicating telepathically. She said, I can hear all your prayers, even though all my prayers were in my mind. She can hear them all. So as I'm praying, nothing is helping. Nothing's working. I'm steadily fading. I could feel my body. I'm steadily drifting towards the white light, fading. So at this point, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give up. I'm going to give into it because nothing I'm saying to God is working. Maybe it's just my time. I need to stop fighting it. So as soon as I said that in my head, nothing was said out loud. As soon as I said that, my wife said to me telepathically, Steve, fight, fight, fight. Don't give up. She heard me. She knew that I was about to give into it. So that gave me a second win. So I started praying again. God, please don't do this. I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. I know that I was chosen to do this, and not even just chosen, but I agreed to do this before my incarnation. You know what I mean? This is part of my plan. Nothing working, nothing working. At that point, I heard the second thing God said to me was, all this information and knowledge I've given you, and this is what you're doing with it, which really hurt because I wasn't doing anything with it. I was wasting it. I was running. I wasn't fulfilling my calling. So at that point, more prayers, called for Jesus, everything. I never saw Jesus or anything like that, but I was doing everything I can. Now it's funny because people have asked me, were you scared to die? I wasn't scared to die because I know where we're going when we die, and we really don't die. It's just a transition. It's not a death. So I wasn't concerned about that. I was concerned about leaving and not fulfilling my mission, not about what's going to happen after death, because there's nothing to worry about after death, because death is just a transition. It's like you're waking up to your true self, and you just move on from there. So I wasn't scared of death. I didn't want to leave without fulfilling my mission, because I know I would probably have to come back and do it again. Like I said, that mission is still a part of my sole purpose. So at that time, I'm praying again. So I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired again. Now I'm right on the verge of the white light, where I'm just guessing here. I'm throwing out a number. I'm literally 90% gone. I'm right on the doorstep. I'm brought to the brink of it. So at the last ditch effort, I don't even know why I said this. It wasn't even me. I said, Wanda, help me. Now, I will say this, because after we talked about it, I asked my wife. She said she heard the voice of God one time, and she said, God said to her, "And why should I leave you here?" And she said, Jordan, which is our son. And she said, that's other than God telling her to lay down and get in position and asking her, why should I keep you? She heard God's voice twice during the ordeal. So I said, Wanda, help me. So she sat up, because I can hear everything she was saying. We were speaking telepathically up at this point. This is the first time that she actually spoke audibly out loud. She starts praying in what we call light language, in tongues. She starts speaking in tongues. So this wasn't really a shock to me, because we've been together 25 years and I've heard this a couple times before. But so I can hear it. I can barely hear it, because I'm so gone. I'm barely even there anymore. So I can vaguely hear it as I'm approaching the light. Now, this was the third time I heard God's voice, and he said to me, Stephen, be quiet and listen to your wife. Now, when he said that, a calm came over me. I was allowed to focus on her. I was like given back my clarity of where I was at that moment. So as soon as I looked over to her, to my right, she started speaking in different languages. She started speaking in an African language and chanting in an African language. Now, we've been together 25 years. The only language we know is English. So in my mind, this is first thought, thinking in human terms and worldly term and ego and logic, that this is impossible. She starts speaking in the African language and chanting. She transitions to a different one. Now, I could tell it's an African language because I've heard it. We've heard in the past. Like you know when someone's speaking Spanish, even though you don't know what they're saying, right? Or Italian. So you know the language, but you don't know what they're saying. She speaks in 3 different African languages, and then she transitions to an Indian language where she's speaking and chanting fluently the words. So I'm in amazement. I can't believe it. But it's funny. As soon as she started doing that, as soon as she started interceding, that's what brought me back. Nothing brought me back before then. Begging, asking God, promising this, begging that, asking for Jesus. Nothing brought me back until she interceded. And I got up as I came fully back. I was brought back. I was back aware in my body. I got up, started pacing the floor. I looked over at her. She was sitting there with a daze on her face. She was in a trance. She was there with her eyes wide open, but just just staring, like she was asleep, but her eyes were open, I guess you could say. So I didn't want to say anything to her. I didn't know what she was going through. I didn't know if she was communicating with. I left her alone. I'm pacing. At this time, I'm getting all these downloads from God about what you're going to do, what's going to happen in the future. My third eye, if we know about our third eye, the pineal gland, my third eye was throbbing and was in so much pain and just throbbing and in pain because I had all this. I was in such a spiritual state of receiving after going through this spiritual event. So my wife finally comes out of it. I said, "Oh my God, do you know what you just did? Do you know what just happened?" And she said, "What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "You just spoke in 3 different languages. Do you know what you just did?" She couldn't remember it at first. So I'm all full of, talk, blah, 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 just excited. And she's like, "Hold on a sec, give me a second." So she takes a second, gathers herself, and starts to come back to her. I said, "What were you saying?" She said, "I have no idea what I'm saying. I don't speak those languages. I have no idea what I was saying. I have no idea." So we came out of it. We started comparing notes. We realized that I could hear your prayers, Stephen. And she said, and I said, "I can hear you telling me to fight and telling me to keep praying and don't give up." We were speaking telepathically. So anyway, in a nutshell, that was our experience, and that was my experience. And I know from that was part of the wake up call because I needed a swift kick. Sometimes, you know, you need that to get on your path of purpose because I thank God for it because who knows how much I would have reverted if it wasn't for God giving me that experience to let me know you are supported like we all are. This is your calling. And basically, you know what, you need to get to it or else. That's kind of how I felt. You need to get to it. Stop fooling around. Because if you're not, then really there's no use in you being here anymore because you fooled around long enough. This is literally what he said. It's one of the phrases, you've wasted enough time. So yeah, so that was it.
I'm sure in the moment, it sounded like a long process, but it was probably so quick that all of this happened. Did you
Yeah.
go to the doctor? Did you get yourself taken care of after that?
You know what? I've had people ask me that, and I had that come to my mind. And as soon as that came to my mind, I was told you don't need to go to the doctor. This is not a medical condition, it's a spiritual condition. You don't need to go to the doctor. So I had never had any kind of pain or symptoms before, and I haven't had any pain or symptoms after this because I know that it wasn't a medical condition, it was a spiritual condition that I went through, that I had to go through.
My goodness. Not too long ago, we spoke with a woman about spiritually transformative experiences.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, there are near death experiences that are part of that, but there are other kinds of experiences that they put you where you need to be in the biggest picture. And I can
Yes.
totally get the way you were describing that wake up call that it's time to get on your mission. I mean, it took, like I said, me hitting rock bottom with my dad
Yes.
dying, like, okay, you're going to do this now.
Right.
Here you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, and I'll say this, and people have kind of misconstrued it, so I want to make sure I explain this. Um, a few months before then, like I said, because I had had a lot of synchronicities, some outer body experiences and whatnot, where I was in the white light, but it wasn't a near death experience. It was a outer body experience where God showed me the love of the white light, showed me or gave me a taste or a piece of His love, and I know a lot of people haven't experienced this, and I've heard this before, where people really can't describe it. It's so intense and incredible. It's undescribable where I felt that. And it was actually so intense, I had to ask God to ease up a little bit because I couldn't take it. I was literally in a ball, crying, clutching myself, trying to take all the love in. It was so powerful. That happened a few months before my NDE and everything. But what I want to say, the reason I say that is because during this NDE, when I was approaching the light, I know God loves me. God loves us all. God is unconditional love. That's what the universe is based on. But this was for me. This was more like I could attribute this to a spiritual spanking. It's like a father coming in the room with a belt. I love you, but you need this. This you know what I mean. You need some tough love. You know what I mean. So it was a totally different experience from that, where it's like, yes, Stephen, I love you, but you need this spanking to get on track because there's people that you need to help. There's things that you need to do. You need to be out there raising the vibration, raising the frequency of this world, this universe. And you know what? I'm going to give you this experience to show you that you are enough. You are supported. This is your calling. You're not crazy. Don't worry about other people's opinions, validation, or approval. And that's where I'm at right now.
I love spiritual spanking. I get it.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's a perfect term for that. And
Yes.
I agree too. There's always going to be people that don't agree with us. There's always going to be
Yeah.
people that think we're crazy,
Hmm.
but that's okay. I
Yeah.
was the biggest skeptic
Yes.
27, 28 years ago that I can't wouldn't even believe I'd be having this conversation now. I really
Right.
thought I
Yep.
knew better, right?
Yeah.
And so we all go on those paths. And sometimes it takes having a crisis or trauma in your life or a death of a loved one or an illness or something that gives us that dark night of the soul, that
Yes.
gets us on our path. So
Right.
you got your little spiritual spanking and look at you now. I want to talk to
Yes.
you a little bit about the afterlife because you seem pretty confident and I too feel very confident that there is
Yes.
one. But we have a lot of listeners and viewers right now who
Mhm.
have a loved one who had passed.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that because I know you work with people now and you have a strong belief in connecting us to our higher selves and getting into that place where we can communicate with our souls, our guides, and our loved ones. Could you talk a little bit about your reasons to believe in the afterlife?
Well, my reasons to believe in the afterlife. Number one, for anybody, what it takes is, and I tell this to my clients, is you have to have an open mind. You have to have an open mind to realize that there's something more, that there's something out there, that everything. Don't believe everything you've been told. Don't believe everything you feel. Don't believe everything you think, because a lot of those things are not reality. And as far as the afterlife, for me, it's just one. I'll tell you this: it starts with all the stories. I'm a firm believer that everybody is not making it up. Everybody's not crazy. Everybody that sees something in the sky is not lying to get attention or not making stuff up. Everybody who's having these, there's too many experiences, there's too many people, there's too much evidence out there for me to not believe. So I was a believer even before any of this happened. I was a believer. I was actually jealous of people that went through it. It's like, wow, that's great. I never thought I would go through it. You never think that. But after going through it, after going through the spiritual awakening and seeing the light in my outer body experience, not the near death experience, feeling the love of God, the synchronicities, the way the universe communicates with you through numbers, through songs, through other people, being on the verge of death, but knowing that, and this is the big thing, is there's just a knowing. A lot of this stuff, people want proof and all that kind of stuff. You got to understand, when you're thinking worldly and logical in this proof, you cannot apply that kind of thinking or kind of logic when trying to understand and interpret spiritual events and concepts. You can't, because it's not going to work, because you're going to put that event in those boundaries, in that box, and you can't do that. The spirit world is unlimited. So in order for us to understand it and even to be in tune and connect with it, we have to unlimit ourselves to be able to connect with it. And when you keep yourself limited, you can't. So being on the verge of death and not fearing death and knowing that on the other side is just a transition of energy, that your loved ones are still there, our soul family is still there. There's been so many synchronicities that I've had from the universe, of being talked to, of being spoken to. And just for me, going through these situations is not something that we can create or imagine on our own. It's a spiritual condition. So just knowing that there is something more out there. There is Your loved ones are out there. Your higher self is out there. Your spirit guides, your angels are out there waiting for you. And they're waiting to contact you. So I encourage people, if you just let go of some of those things that you hold on as truths, let go. I'll teach you how to identify that negative thinking, identify those social and mental constructs, religious dogma that's keeping you trapped and not allowing you to experiencing what the universe wants to show you, what it wants to tell you. And even the loved ones out there that may be trying to communicate, but you have all these blockages, you have all these hindrances that are keeping you from receiving. So it is real, it is out there, and I'm telling you this not because of a book I read, not because of somebody else's experience, and not because of the doctrines I've studied. It's real through experience. And that's another thing that God told me. You claiming or thinking that you're not enough, I was told, is no matter what you read, no matter what you study, no matter what degrees, certificates you get, that's all great. Knowledge and wisdom is great. Nothing beats experience of going through it and living it. And that's why I can be a true example of not what my brother told me, not what my mother said or a friend said, or not what I read, but what I've experienced. And it's all there waiting for you once you release. Because when you continue to limit yourself, you limit the universe and you limit your connection.
Perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. I know that ego is a bear, and I know we live in a time that we're constantly looking at
Yes.
our phones, checking mail, checking text messages. We live in the past, we live in the
Yeah.
future, in our mind. We're busy, 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 busy.
Yep.
And it's my firm belief, Stephen, that our connection to everything is in the present moment
Yes, definitely.
and to be caught up. And so we need to slow down. Do
Yes.
you recommend any meditative kind of processes for people to slow down and to connect?
I do. I do have processes and meditations for connection, but before I get into that, the most important thing is the open-mindedness. So when I talk to people, I don't take on all my clients, all the people that come to me, because I'm a firm believer in not wasting anybody's time or resources. And if I don't truly believe I can help you, I'm not I don't I can't do that. I'm not gonna I don't do that. I do not waste time. I believe that you have to be open. And you have to be open to looking at yourself and doing the shadow work first before you get into that. Because there's a lot of people that come to me actually and say, you know what, I'm meditating, I'm doing sound baths, I'm earthing, I'm walking in nature, and I just don't feel the connection. I don't understand what's wrong. I'm not hearing it. I don't get it. And the reason behind that is because you're not dealing with those low vibration feelings, emotions, and thoughts that are blocking, that are hindering. So you have to deal with those first. You have to address those. If you haven't forgiven your mother for something, if you're jealous of your best friend for something, if if you get on the phone and you have expectations of people, and these little things like this we don't think about, is expectations. You call somebody and need something or want to tell them something, and you expect a certain a response, and you or expect a certain outcome. Or I had a client I was dealing with this. They said they called somebody and they wanted a favor, and they said, well, I did the same favor for them a few months ago, so I know they'll do it for me. But you don't do that. When you hold on that expectation and you start getting angry because they don't react like you do, or you start judging, or you start getting mad, all those little things that we do, that we sweep under the rug, that we don't think is a big deal, and we don't look at, or we try to justify, but because I'm angry, because I'm mad, and we justify those feelings. When you go to try to connect, you're not going to be able to get the full connection, because you're not dealing with those blockers and hindrances. Like I tell people, it's kind of like Wi-Fi. You know how your Wi-Fi buffers when you're trying to play a song or a TV show? I said a lot of people are spiritually buffering. You know what I mean? It may play once in a while. You may get inkling here and there. You may get a connection here and there, but to get that to play fully, we have to deal with those things first. And I think a lot of people, what they make the mistake of skipping the shadow work and dealing with the issues, and want to jump over that and jump to the spiritual practices. And I had attributed it to a car. When we take a car in for an oil change, what's the first thing they do? They drain the old oil. They don't put new oil on top of that old oil, right? You got to drain that old oil first for that car to run at its optimum level. Now, you could put the new oil in on top of the oil and still run, but you're not going to run and be fully connected and run at your best and get all the signs and the messages and be able to receive, unless you deal with those things that are blocking and hindering. Because all those low vibrational thoughts, feeling, jealousy, anger, unforgiveness, that's all opposite of the universe. That's all opposite of God, right? So if you're operating in things that are opposite of God, what do you think that does to your connection? No matter what spiritual practice you do, and you're holding on to that.
Right. I've heard it phrased this way, and it's the same throughout our life. We make judgments about other
Hmm.
people. I can't trust you, or even
Yeah.
to ourselves, I'm not good enough. And it's
Yep.
like we put on different pairs of glasses.
Right.
So we've got
That's right.
I'm not good enough. I can't trust you, all these things. And then we
Yes.
think, oh, I want to have this spiritual transformation, not realizing that
Right.
we can't see clearly. So we have to be able to pick off those judgments, put them back in the past where they belong, and then we're free to
Right.
be able to explore. So I love that. Do
Yes.
you meet with people first? Obviously, I'm assuming you meet with people on Zoom because you get people
Yes.
from all over the world.
Yes.
People can go to your website. You want to tell us what we can find on your website, what it is, and how people can
Yes.
reach you?
My website is basically a little more, well, it has my story on there, and I do have video of my NDE, which goes into more detail. I have an interview on there that I've done. I've had the services that I provide, workshops, Q&A, talks, one-on-one. And for me, it's like I said, it's all about having people realize their power, come into their power. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, unfortunately, have been conditioned to, and I'm not downing any. It's not about downing any religion or any faith, because I consider myself an omnist, which I find truth in all the religions. I find some truth, and I take the good from all of them and I apply them. But here's the thing, and I'm not knocking any religion, but what people have to understand is they have to stop giving their power to other people and other institutions, putting their power in other people to connect them with God. And whether that's a pastor, a priest, a clergyman, or an institution, we have the power to connect. These people, we got to stop putting people and institutions on pedestals, that they're above us, that they're higher than us, that they have a better connection, that they're more, basically, that they're more worthy. I'm not worth, what they're telling us is, I'm not worthy to connect on my own and have my own spiritual experience with God and talk to God and connect with the angels in my spirit team. I need to go to this man. I need to go to this institution. And you don't. And you don't. You have the power within. You know, now there are some people where we all have an equal connection. Some people are more connected because they're more in tune and they deal with a lot of the things I mentioned and talked about earlier. But people need to stop giving their power to institutions and running the institutions and man and expecting to be connected. I have family come to me and say they've been in church for 20, 30 years and they don't feel a connection. I said, why do you keep going? And listen, this is the thing. Keep going because it's comfortable, because it's all I know, because I don't know what else to do. And that's what I want to have people to know, that you have the power within to connect. And a spiritual coach, it's not his job to tell you what your path or purpose is. It's not his job to tell you what you should be doing or what you should believe. It's about having you coming in your power, being there as a support, helping you identify those blockages and hindrances and dealing with them, changing your perspective. Because there's only two perspectives. You can think of things, go through life thinking of things and perceiving things and having the paradigm of a worldly view, logical, man-made view, or we could shift our perspective, look at things more spiritually and through a spiritual lens, which just like one of the biggest things is judgment. I tell people that have this judgment, when you look at someone and you see what they're doing, we label, oh, what's wrong with them? They're crazy. That's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. All those are low vibrational thoughts and feelings that keep you stuck and don't align with spiritual and universal laws. And it affects your connection. So what I tell people, looking at these people and looking at it from a more spiritual view, you know what? That's their path and purpose. There's something that they have to learn. There's a lesson that they have to go through. That's why I'm in no position to judge. Now, maybe that's not something I would do or something. You could say that, okay, that's not a choice I would make. That's fine. But to judge them and label them crazy, stupid, what's wrong with them? All those low vibrational thoughts and feelings block and hinder your connection. So no matter what you do spiritually, the spiritual practice you, that doesn't make you spiritual. The first step towards spirituality and truly connecting is unlimiting yourself. All those things that you believe to be true and concrete, you have to let those go. Because if you're stuck in believing this is the only truth and this is what I believe and there's nothing else, you're limiting yourself. How do you break out of that box? You're stuck in that construct. So you have to unlearn everything you've learned, and you have to be willing to address the things deep down that you maybe are sweeping under the rug or not a big deal or you're trying to justify. That's how you begin to connect spiritually, not by running to meditation and yoga and all that, which is great, which is good. But a lot of people are skipping it. They're skipping the main part of the connection.
My goodness, really good advice. It feels like we've got a little coaching session. Spiritual Alignment SL.com is your website. And
Yes,
it
ma'am.
all sounds so good. I do hope you're writing a lot down and that there's a book in your future, because I just feel like there's a little handbook for living from Steven LaRussa that is going to be appearing someday somehow. The world needs
Yes.
your words, and you can only work with so many people one-on-one, but it takes nothing to read a book or listen to a podcast or read a Kindle or something like that. Well,
Right.
Steven, with our time together, you got a
Yes.
nice audience listening to you. What's
Yes.
something
Thank
maybe
you.
we could do today just to kind of open ourselves up to maybe the bigger picture or our loved ones or whatever it is you'd like to say, just to kind of complete our episode? You got some great people listening right now, and you've really touched our hearts with your story.
Yes, I appreciate it. And here's a few things that I suggest. One, one first step, work on unlimiting your mind. Work on unlearning what you've learned. First of all, work on being more open, more receiving to ideals. Don't be so concrete in your beliefs and your thoughts and your emotions. You got to release those. Also, it's very important to judgment, expectations. Those are two of the biggest things that hinder us right there, that we do consciously and sometimes unconsciously. Now, but as far as connection, here's the three biggest things that I use when I'm feeling a little spiritually down or need a little boost or whatnot. Is one, it's important to stay in the present. You mentioned this earlier, staying in the present, because you cannot receive the messages from your loved ones, from your spirit guides, from source, from angels. You cannot receive them if you're not in the present, because those messages are going to come to you in the present. They're not going to come to you in the past. They're not going to come to you in the future, right? So a couple tips for being in the present. It's very simple. When you're out and about, when you're at home, focus on the task at hand. If you're washing the dishes, feel the cup, feel the warmth of the water or the coolness of the water or the suds. When you're outside, take note of what you're smelling, what you're seeing, when you're eating, what you're tasting. Slow down in life and taste it and embrace it. Listen to the sound. All being present is basically being in tune with your current environment or situation. So if you do little things like that, feel when you touch something, take the time to feel how it touches. All those things, smell, using those senses and being in tune, that helps keep you in the present. Two is being grateful. Being grateful. Other than unconditional love, being grateful is the second highest frequency in the universe, other than unconditional love, is being grateful. Now, here's the thing, to take your gratefulness to a higher level, real quick, everybody's grateful for the things, oh, my job and roof over my head, my family, all great. But here's what I tell people, when you start being grateful for the situations that you went through that we think we classify as tough or bad or horrible, and realize, change your perspective that those were learning lessons. Those were things I needed to learn from, to grow and evolve from. That's part of switching our perception, switching the perception of those things being bad, terrible, horrible. Because then every time you think about them again, you're reliving them and you're bringing your vibration down, right? So let's change the perspective of, what did I learn from that? What did I get out of that? Or if that situation comes up, how can I handle it better from a different perspective, where I can stop, especially for people that are caught in a loop. I always hear, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep going through this? That's part of stopping that loop. Once you learn and you transcend that lesson and learn it and perceive it and handle it differently, it'll stop. It'll be removed from your life. I guarantee it, because it's happened with me. So be grateful for those things that we look at as bad or terrible, and turn them around and look at them as lessons. What do I learn? What did I do differently? Real quickly, is embracing oneness. We're all one. We're all from God. We're all from source. So this ideal of separatism, this illusion of separatism, helps to hinder and block your connection. Because if you consider yourself separate from everything and everybody, me against him, her against him, Democrat against Republican, white against black, that creates separatism. That's anti-universe. The universe, that duality, it goes against the universe. That's something for us to learn and grow and evolve from. But you think of everything as one. The plants, the rocks, the trees, everything everything you see, smell, touch, or hear is from source. And you just embrace that and kind of keep that thought in your head throughout the day. Those are things that raise your vibration. Those three things raise your vibration and open you up to receiving spiritual downloads, to receiving messages, signs, and synchronicities from the universe.
Steven, I have absolutely loved talking with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow. And I'm sure our listener has as well. Oh, as a reminder, visit Steven's website, spiritualalignment spiritualalignmentsl.com. That's in Steven LaRussa.
Mhm.
Spiritual alignment sl.com. And also come visit me at wedon'tdie.com. Lots of good things happening there, including every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific or 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. UK. We offer a free Sunday gathering inspirational service. It's very empowering on life and the afterlife. You'll leave with a smile. And part of it is a demonstration of mediumship. So loved ones come in all the time from the unseen world, letting us know just how close they are. It's fun and it is free. We have medium classes. We have tons of past interviews and all kinds of good things. So just go explore wedon'tdie.com. That's my home base. In closing, I'm Sandra Champlain. I'm always so happy to be your host on We Don't Die. I do believe that life is an education for the soul and that your life here on earth is important. So do us all a favor today and just slow down a little, be present, add some gratitude into your life. Re-listen to this episode because you're going to hear it again, all new. Take a little notepad, jot down some of the highlights, and you can add them to your life. So I really want to thank you for listening or for watching, and we'll see you again soon.